Happy to kick off another season of Saints Tonight here on CST. It's our pleasure to welcome you in, along with my Super Bowl champ, Scott Shanley, and great to see our Hall of Famer, Deuce McAllister, once again. I'm Victor Howell. Our Saints insider, Mike Neighbors, will join us in just a few moments as we recap Game 1 of this 2018 campaign. And I guess to recap it, at least we can say, at least we're not Buffalo. I mean, I'm not really sure what else to say with that. 88 combined points in this ball game. It sets an NFL record for season openers. You have to go back to 1947 to find a season opening game that had this many points, and back then it was 87 when the Eagles beat the Redskins in that game. Deuce, it's our first chance to see you this season. I had the pleasure again of listening to you on the Saints radio broadcast, and what I liked about it in your post-game recap, you didn't hold any punches. So for our television audience, we certainly know disappointing is out there. So let's just go ahead and put that out. Your other reactions as to what you saw this afternoon in Game 1 at home.
Can we start with disappointing again?
Sure, all right.
I mean, I think that's a good one to start with. I think, you know, this team is better than what they showed today. And even you go back to preseason game, you go back to the practices, just going out and watching them, they have to detail their work better than what they did today. And so, you know, Coach Payton, his mantra has been prove them right. Well, they got a lot of proving to do, and I think it starts with each individual player. That's what they have to do. Prove it to themselves first. Disappointing,
certainly, Scott, when you looked at the overall effort. Frustrating. The fans, they were certainly vocal with their frustration in the dome. Even worse, outside the dome, trust me, when they were leaving. But, you know, we focused on this morning, not only was it a season opener, it's a season opener in your division. It's a loss. Does it feel more like a loss and a half because you dropped one at home to the Bucs to open up the season?
Yeah, anytime you lose to an opponent in your division, it absolutely feels like that. You're going to get another chance to play them. But I really think, I go back to the end of last year when Tampa Bay beat the Saints at their place. I think they gained a lot of confidence from that game. They had a lot of confidence coming into this game. But when you look at the Saints team, before last year, having 3 7-9 seasons, they're back to that point where they have to prove people wrong. And I think this team really functioned well in that role last year when they were 0-2. So now, instead of the whole prove it right mantra, you got to go back to we got to prove them wrong, because there's a lot of people doubting this team now.
And one thing we talked about before we get to the highlights, Deuce, and I talked about this with Scott this morning on Saints Game Day, it's that idea of handling expectations. I asked him about entering a season, even back to the Super Bowl season. Right. He said, no, Super Bowl year, we weren't having these expectations. Maybe it was like the 06-07 season they felt it. But this team certainly seems to be riding into the season with as much, if not more, expectations than we've seen in quite some time.
Well, you have to go out and you do it on the field. That's where it has to happen. If you can't go out and prove it on the field, then what happens, you know, what we say in the media, you know, what they're saying in the locker room, it doesn't really matter, because if you're not doing it on Sunday when it actually counts, none of it matters, and you're going to find yourself chasing teams and, you know, finding a way, well, who won this game? And you have to control what you can control, and that's your actual game.
Well, we certainly have a lot to break down. We will hear from some of the Saints players, including Sean Payton, including Mike's interview with Drew Brees, and we'll take a look around the rest of the NFC South coming up. But as we always do, let's take it back to the action and how it unfolded at the Dome this afternoon. A fantastic crowd that was brought to life early when the Saints took the field, because they were as efficient as you could possibly imagine on the opening drive. You want to talk about setting a tone. 2nd and 6 from the 33. Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara out of the backfield, and watch him turn on the Jets. Get past a couple of tackles. When it's all said and done, it's a 35-yard game. Now 1st and 5 from the 27. And Brees to his other go-to guy that we focused on this morning on Saints Game Day, Michael Thomas. That's good for 14 yards. Taysom Hill then comes in at the quarterback. It's a little bit of wildcat action. Drew Brees is set up to the outside. It's Hill there at the quarterback. He's going to hand it off. You see him at the snap there. Kamara takes in 5 yards and a touchdown. It's 6 plays, 71 yards in just over 3 minutes, and the Saints go right down the field, and it's 7-0 New Orleans. And it took Tampa Bay all of 4 plays to silence the crowd. 1st and 10 from the 42, and Fitzpatrick up top to Deshaun Jackson. Somehow, Jameis Winston has trouble finding him. Fitzpatrick did not have trouble finding him. Deuce, what did you see on this 58-yard touchdown pass?
Miscommunication on the back end. Patrick Robinson does a really good job of jamming him, but they have to understand and know, if you're going to pass a guy off, the guy on the back end has to understand that he has him. And right there, you have Marcus Williams trying to come over, but he was not responsible for that receiver, D-Jack, on that play.
So we are tied at 7 after that touchdown. 3rd and 2 now for the Saints. Michael Thomas again, good for 11 yards and another first down. He had a whale of a day. More on him a little later. 2nd and 10 from the 45. How Benjamin Watson gets it going across the middle for 11 yards. Eventually the drive stalls in terms of moving the ball, but you bring in Will Lutz, and he's true from 36 yards, 11 plays with 58 yards in just over 5 minutes, and the Saints are back up top 10-7, and the scoring was just getting started. 1st and 10 for the Bucs, Peyton Barber. Up the middle, then bounces it 23 yards for the gain on 1st and 10 and another first down. Later in the drive, 2nd and 10 from the Saints 40. Fitzpatrick to Chris Godwin. That's good for 16 yards and another first down. In fact, the next play, Fitzpatrick to Mike Evans, who had a big day as well. Over the top, over the shoulder, and he gets it down to about the 3. 1st and goal from the 3, and Fitzpatrick is going to take it, evaluate the situation, and watch him tiptoe into the end zone. 6 plays, 75 yards in under 2.5 minutes. It's 14-10 Tampa Bay. Saints get the ball back, and they're going to drive again on 1st and 10. Breeze to Thomas again. This one for 35 yards. 313 total yards in the first quarter alone. The Saints had the ball for more than 10.5 minutes, but after the first quarter, they trail by 4. However, the Saints are in the middle of a drive, as we just showed you, and it didn't take long. 1st and 10 from the 28. Breeze out of the gun. Up top, Ted Ginn Jr. Over the shoulder, and Breeze puts it in the breadbasket. 17-14 Saints, a 4-play, 74-yard drive that took just over 2 minutes. So again, efficiency early. Saints back up top by 3. Buccaneers kick a field goal. It's not shown. We tied at 17. Then after the Saints' first punt of the day, Fitzpatrick to Mike Evans. Then Fitzpatrick to O.J. Howard. Evans was 12 yards. Howard's 19 yards. 1st and 10 from the 39. Fitzpatrick to Mike Evans again. This is good for 15 yards over the middle. 3rd and 6 as Tampa Bay makes it to the New Orleans 9, and Fitzpatrick caps it off with this 9-yard touchdown pass. 5 minutes off the clock, 10-play drive for Tampa Bay that ate up 78 yards. It's 24-17. Now, turning point, 1st and 10 from the 32. Newly signed Mike Gillislee from New England. His 3rd touch as a Saint, coughs it up. Justin Evans off the bounce, picks it up, 34 yards on the return. So all of a sudden, one mistake, and Tampa Bay instantly converts it. Now it's 31-17 Bucks. Saints get the ball back. 2nd and 5 from the 30. Breeze, Kamara, 18 yards near midfield. First down, New Orleans. 2nd and 10 from Tampa Bay's 38. Breeze finds Kamara again. Not a great running day, an outstanding receiving day for the Saints running back. This one good for 23 yards. As Scott was telling us earlier, boy, did he pick up where he left off. Just his ability to elude tacklers and get down the field. Good for 23 there. Then Breeze to Michael Thomas. Wide open in the back of the end zone. Breeze, 17 of 21 for 238 in the first half. Turnover being the difference, and the Saints trail by 7. By the way, Tampa Bay scored on every possession in that half except the last possession because they took a knee to run out the clock. Tampa Bay leads 31-24 as we head to the 3rd quarter. On 2nd and 7, Fitzpatrick incomplete, and this is where things started to kind of unravel a little bit. You see, roughing the passer call. Scott, is this one of those things people can be watching carefully with the way they throw this flag?
Yeah, if you watch a lot of games today, a lot of games change on these type of plays. You just have to roll with it. This is the new NFL. They're not always like you want it, but hey, you got to keep playing football after that.
Fitzpatrick goes up top to Mike Evans, but guess what? Another roughing the passer on the Saints. This one by Davenport.
Here, I don't know. I mean, he comes in, gets his head maybe a little bit too close to his helmet. Again, that's the new NFL. If they think you're being a little too rough with the quarterback, you're going to get a flag.
Now, credit the Saints defense. They held to a field goal, and you had that feeling they've got to score in a possession. But the Saints don't. They give it back to Tampa Bay, and they do. Mike Evans for 50 yards on that touchdown. Now we're starting to feel a little trouble. It's 41-24 Tampa Bay. So they got down to the 2, got held to a field goal. They stop the Saints, then they score on a quick play. 2nd and 4 now. Saints have the ball. Breeze to Michael Thomas, 18 yards, but he fumbles. 2nd turnover of the day. Now you're really in trouble. The Saints in the 3rd quarter had a 3-and-out, a 4-and-out, and a 4-and-fumble. This play right here. Heading to the 4th, and they're starting to feel a little desperate. Tampa in control, 41-24, and Tampa Bay has the ball. But not for long. 1st and 10 from the New Orleans 36, and Fitzpatrick back to pass, and there's that connection. Fitzpatrick to Deshaun Jackson again. He has a couple of steps on Crowley. He gets into the end zone. It's now 48-24, and now you're really feeling desperate. After an Alvin Kamara 1-yard touchdown, later in the 4th, 2nd and 1 from the 6th, Kamara again, his 3rd of the day. Breeze hits them. They go for 2. They get it. It's now 48-40, so the Saints have life. They get a stop. Saints trying to get the ball back. 3rd and 11. 2:40 to go. You need one more stop for a chance to try to tie it. But Fitzgerald needs 12, gets 13. It's a first down. The Saints have no more timeouts to stop the clock, and that's how the game ends. Tampa Bay wins it 48 to 40. The Bucs' 48 points in a game ties a franchise high all-time for points in a game. Fitzpatrick has a career-high 417 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 of which went north of 50 yards. And Tampa Bay had 2 wide receivers with more than 140 yards receiving. You see Breeze's number, nothing to sneeze at. 37 of 45 for 439 and 3 touchdowns. But those 2 fumbles certainly hurt the Saints. Michael Thomas, we told you, a whale of a day. More on him later. A team record 16 catches for 180 yards, 1 touchdown. I gave you the numbers on Fitzpatrick, who got the start as Jameis Winston starts the first of 3 games under suspension. But New Orleans, in the end, winless in a season opener again since 2013, and a disappointing opener in the Dome.
We didn't play well enough to win that game, and try to get back in it, give ourselves a chance to win it, but we certainly didn't play well enough, and they did. I don't want to take anything away from how they played. I thought they played awfully well. You have to come ready to play in this league, period. And, you know, I give credit to Tampa. Listen, the quarterback played exceptionally well for them. I thought the offensive line played well. I thought the quarterback, for the most part, was pressure-free. And that's going to be tough. And if he's pressure-free, then the receivers are running through the defense. That makes it doubly tough. So somewhere you got to disrupt the timing of the passing game.
There's a lot of new guys on the team, and we still trying to gel together and get right, you know. So, I mean, it's first game. Don't panic, you know, we good. We went 0-2 last year and went on the 8-game winning streak, so we good.
We heard him there say went 0-2 last year and then went on an 8-game win streak. You don't want to get used to going 0-1, 0-2, and 0-3 and having to fight your way back out. And yes, it was the first game, but you know what? Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Buccaneers looked really, really good, and they were the ones on the road, and in the end, they're the ones who should be feeling good with that win.
Well, when you look at this team, they've always had talent. I mean, it may have been quarterback play where they got in trouble, but this team has always had talent. You know, Mike Evans is one of the top receivers in the NFL. Deshaun Jackson before it, when he was at Philly, when he was at Washington, he was always a guy that could run. And then you had in Brate, you had O.J. Howard, Goodwin. All of those guys are elite players, and so for them, it's protecting the quarterback and, you know, who was the quarterback. Jameis Winston doesn't use Deshaun Jackson like they have in the past, and you just saw Fitzpatrick connect with them.
I think Jameis Winston might be finding a nice sit on the bench as Ryan Fitzpatrick plays like this. And it's funny you said that, because as we get ready to break the Saints down, you said this morning, Scott. Tampa Bay has always been one of those teams, as you mentioned, they always have a lot of nice, shiny parts, and it all looks good. Right. They can never get them to fit together. Boy, all of a sudden they did today.
They did, and I think having that guy in Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's one of those guys where in the pregame show we called him a game manager. He's not going to make mistakes, but maybe he didn't have the arm strength or the talent to make all the plays. Well, today he did, and a lot of it was his guys around him made the plays. The offensive line protected well. I thought the offensive play callers for them kept the Saints defense off balance throughout the game. And when the plays were there to be made, he made them. He didn't miss guys running wide open deep. He didn't miss them. There wasn't enough pressure in his face. He made the throws when he had to. He made the plays. You got to credit him with that.
But when this game started, it was the Saints that had the ball first at home, and it was about, as I mentioned, as efficient a drive as you would want to see. As we take a look at some of the good that we saw on the offensive side of the ball, and Deuce, you were on the call. I mean, they came out, and it just looked like they had been doing this for months on end, not game one of the season. Everywhere Drew Brees looked, open players, and then they made big gains.
Well, they really were able to isolate guys in one-on-one matchups. Here you have Alvin Kamara, and he's been doing this a long, long time. And whenever you get Mike Thomas in the slot against a linebacker, Drew is looking for him. So they were able just to go and find matchups that they really, really liked. You know, here's Taysom Hill running the Wildcat, and, you know, Drew, don't you get close to the football as far as a receiver. But that's just Sean Payton being creative. You knew at some point it would occur. Didn't know if it was 2-point or a third down play, but when it did, they executed.
So they had the touchdown, then they got a field goal. Then you go to the second quarter, ending that drive from the end of the first quarter, another touchdown to Michael Thomas. Then the punt, and it was the first punt of the game midway through the second quarter, then the turnover. Now let's just talk about what happened to the offense after that, because, like you mentioned, the first possession, as good as it can get. Even going into the second quarter, looked very efficient. What happened? Why did it become stagnant all of a sudden? Why were they, and like in the third quarter, 4 and out, 3 and out, 4, and then a fumble?
Well, I think it was having to play catch up, and so not having the ability to be able to run the football. You only had 13 rushes. You were not stopping them on defense, so now you felt them kind of pressuring. And then you've also had one fumble, you know, that got taken back for a touchdown. But you really just started losing at the line of scrimmage. Here, they give up pressure, and they were able to get a sack But instead of McCoy being lined up as a normal 3 technique, he's lined up on top of the tackle. He makes it very hard for the tackle to be able to get to that defensive end. And here, Mike Gisley has to be able to squeeze this ball. If he doesn't squeeze it, I mean, hey, it may be only a 2-yard gain, but you cannot turn this ball over. And, you know, it's just unfortunate because he had it in the right hand as far as the left hand is concerned. The defender just put his helmet right on the ball, and that was really a turning point for that offense. And here, Drew is able to step up in the pocket. He finds Mike Thomas, and Mike sees one guy, but it's the guy behind him that he doesn't see, and he's got to be able to squeeze that ball, be able to get the first 10, 15 yards that you have. And, you know, I know you want to make another play. You've got to be able to squeeze that ball because now, if you don't, you put yourself in a bad situation.
It's amazing when you look at the timing of these turnovers as well, because we talked about how the offenses were really trading points, whether it was a field goal or a touchdown. Right. Both offenses were moving down the field. But then you have the fumble, which is a pick 6, pick 7 that goes back. So right there, that changes possession. And that fumble you just saw from Thomas comes back to that possession I talked about. You wind up letting Tampa Bay, you basically escort them to the 2-yard line with those roughing the passer penalties. The defense not only stops, it pushes Tampa Bay back and forces them to a field goal. We know the offense, when they take the field, always wants to score, but you had that feeling you have to score. Build that momentum back because you stopped Tampa Bay on the doorstep of the goal line. Not only did you get the ball once, you got it twice, and you couldn't score. Now it's 41-24. Here you are moving down the field. Thomas fumbles. What happened? Tampa Bay goes down and score. Now it's 48-24, and you feel like, oh man, this is over.
Yep. Yeah, I think that was just one of those points of the game. You got to give the Saints a lot of credit. They fought back to make it a game after that point. But the one thing about the NFL is you go through off-season, you go through preseason. Some of the guys don't take as many reps as they used to. You don't know what you have in a team until you get to the actual games to find out how they react in adverse situations. And there was a lot of adversity in today's game. Everything was going good. We looked at the offense clicking. As soon as some adverse situations happened, things kind of snowballed out of control instead of guys getting control of it and not letting it get to that point.
All right, so let's talk about on the defensive side of the ball. Scott, I hate to toss this on your lap, but here we go. You ready? Tampa Bay had 9 plays in this ball game, 9 that went for more than 20 yards. So you talk about big splash plays. But 6 of those 9 went for more than 34 yards, and 2 of them that were touchdowns, more than 50 yards. Was it a problem in the back, or how much does this go up to where it was on the front, where Fitzpatrick had all sorts of time to see what was going on?
Listen, I've been in a lot of those exchanges on the sideline. You're going to have D linemen saying, hey, we got to cover back there. And you're going to have DB saying, hey, we got to get pressure up there. So there's a lot of conversation going back and forth, and you really don't know until you watch it in the film room. But I think it was a combination of both. First of all, guys are running way too open. You don't see guys that open in the NFL really on a week-to-week basis. But on the other side of the D-line, there wasn't enough consistent pressure. There weren't enough guys winning one-on-one pass rushes consistently to make that ball come out fast. And the one thing you don't want to do as a defense coordinator is overreact and start sending the house when your DBs are struggling, because now you give them a lot more field to cover. But at some point, I felt like maybe Dennis Allen could have drawn up some more blitzes, brought some more heat on Fitzpatrick. He's a smart player, but I just felt like he was holding on the ball way too long.
Oh, and you mentioned he's a game manager. He's one of only 4 quarterbacks in the NFL that has touchdown passes for 7 different teams. And today, very efficient for Tampa Bay, over 400 yards. In fact, his quarterback rating was 2 points shy, 156.3. A 158.3 is considered perfect for what Fitzpatrick did today. And New Orleans gives up the 6th most passing yards allowed in franchise history, and that's courtesy of Ryan Fitzpatrick, as Tampa Bay gets the win 48-40 over the New Orleans Saints. After the ball game, our Saints insider Mike Neighbors inside the Saints locker room, he had a chance to talk to Ken Crawley.
Ken, how surprising is this game for this defense?
It wasn't surprising. We just came out flat. We played boo-boo. I kind of feel like we could have challenged them way more than we challenged them. It's unacceptable, and we got to get back to work.
What did Ryan Fitzpatrick do that you maybe didn't expect? Were there any surprises there?
He came out hot. We try to get some little pressure on him and try to make him misread some stuff, but tips off on him. He had a great game. They was clicking the whole game.
How disappointing is it given the expectations for you guys and how well this defense played a year ago?
It was very disappointing. We wasn't trying to go down that road of starting off that 0-2 start and stuff like that, but we not going to divide. We know what our expectations we set in the beginning of the season. Just one game at a time, we're going to get back on track.
And you guys have bounced back before. You did it last year. Does that give you faith you can do it again?
Exactly. We're a close team. We're a family, and we know we're going to get back on track.
Kind of That's King Crawley here. Saints defense disappointing effort against the Bucs. Back to you guys.
Mike, thanks. More from the Saints locker room coming up. When we come back, we will talk about the run game. What was of the run game? There wasn't a lot of running today for the Saints, and the numbers prove it. We'll talk about that. And later, we'll take you a trip around the NFC South. The other team playing, the Carolina Panthers. We know Atlanta already has a loss on the season. The Panthers open at home against the Cowboys. More on that when we come back. We're back as we continue here on Saints Tonight. Game 1 of the 2018 season falls disappointingly for the Saints, 48-40 in a home loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Deuce, this morning we were focusing as really kind of a review of the preseason, getting ready for Game 1. And one of the things I was discussing with Scott is the irony that you get excited about setting the roster Saturday a week ago. And then over a span of 72 hours, we see the Saints bouncing guys all over the place from the roster to the practice squad, then re-signing them. And they all seem to be at the running back position. Were there concerns trying to fill in this gap with Mark Ingram being out with all of those moves? And I'm asking you that because I'm about to tell you about the rushing numbers from today.
Yeah, yes and no. I think the concern really was on the offensive line with them not having Bushrod available and then Andres Pete still being hurt. That's where the movement really came. And so the running back position was the position that probably suffered because those guys, yes, you know, they were able to, Boston Scott was able to be brought back on practice squad. You're able to, you know, obviously add Mike Gisley to that roster. But I mean, at the end of the day, outside of one or two guys, Jonathan Williams, he was the only other consistent with Alvin Kamara. So there was a lot of movement there. You want to get some continuity going with that offensive line. But today you only had 13 rushes, and I don't know if it hurt or helped you actually in this game. You would love to have run the ball more, but you were down. And
that's what was going to lead to, because you go to the rushing game and all the highlight numbers and all the big scores that you saw. Alvin Kamara had 29 yards rushing. Now, look, he was outstanding in terms of total offense, 9 catches for 112 yards. He had 29 rushing yards. The Saints only had 43 rushing yards in the game. So there certainly wasn't that balance, Scott, that you're looking for. And you and I were talking about this during the game, Scott, and I told you I would ask you this tonight on the program. How much of this was due to the fact that you were missing Mark Ingram? How much could have changed, if anything, if Ingram's active as opposed to using him like going through today like you did, knowing that you can't use him?
Yeah, obviously a lot changes when you have a running back the caliber of Mark Ingram not there. Obviously you're going to run him a lot more, but I think more of today's game is based on what Deuce said. The way the game started to play out, the biggest difference from this game today based on what they did last year, running the ball and being effective, controlling the clock, staying ahead of the chains, was the defense didn't play like this last year in many games. So when the defense is giving up touchdowns and you have to trade 7 for 7 constantly, you're not able to sit there and run for 3 or 4 yards and control the sticks, control the clock. And so more about today's running game, and my concern would be the way the defense played and how Coach Payton had to call the game.
So, Deuce, there's not a lot of running game there to be had other than Kamara's 29 yards, which isn't really what you'd consider a quote-unquote highlight for the rushing game today. He was outstanding as a receiver, but so was Michael Thomas. He has so many big numbers today, I have to write them all down because I can't remember them all, but let me just tell you, he finished with a franchise record 16 catches, a team-high 180 receiving yards. It's his 4th 100-yard game of his career, a single-game career high in receiving yards, and he broke the Saints' single-game receiving record set by Tony Galbraith. That was back in 1978. Drew Brees certainly likes to go to Michael Thomas, comfort level, but boy, and I asked Scott this morning on our show, can he pick up where he left off after the first 2 years, where he's improved from year 1 to year 2, where last year he led the team in receiving and yards and touchdowns? I would say, at least after this game, it's a resounding yes.
I think so also, and when you talk about the run game, they use the short passing game today as an extension of the run. I think that's something that's important as well. So some of the catches that Mike had, as well as Alvin Kamara, those were really almost like a long handoff in certain situations. But to see him have the type of game that he had, he was ready to play. But I can guarantee you, he will tell you, there's one play, maybe 2 plays that he wants back, and that's the drop that he had and the fumble. If he could take those 2 plays back, he'll give you every catch, every other catch in a heartbeat.
Yep, and that drop, the drop you talk about, middle of the field, kept the Saints from getting the first down, and then the fumble wound up leading to yet another touchdown for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But it was a monster game for Michael Thomas, unfortunately, albeit in a loss for the Saints. But afterwards, our Mike Neighbors had a chance to catch up with him.
Mike, many will be surprised with this score around the league. How surprised is this team and what happened against the Bucs?
You know, we just got to get back to work and correct our mistakes, and find when we watch the film, be honest with ourselves, take coaching. We know how to respond, and get back to playing Saints football.
Plays you can point to. On one play you weren't touched, looked like you could have scored. Just what was your reaction to that play looking back?
It was hard, you know. You want to put points on the board for your team. You want to help out the defense. You want to contribute. You want to add value. And I felt like they let one get away. just have to respond, lesson learned, and get it corrected. Don't make the same mistake twice.
You pride yourself in catching balls, uncharacteristic drops in the second half. How disappointing was that?
It was one drop. It was very uncharacteristic, undisciplined. Got to be completely honest with myself so it doesn't happen again, and we'll correct it.
How do you move forward after this game now?
Go harder. Just go harder. Just whatever it takes to get the job done. Just go harder. Don't end up in a situation again.
Michael Thomas, kind of a mixed bag against the Bucks. Some good, some bad, and some ugly, and some mysterious as well. Back to you guys in the studio.
Mike, thank you very much. And you saw that one play on the highlight there. He clearly wasn't touched, and boy, Sean Payton was letting the officials have it on that one. But it was one of those where, and we were even asking in the press box, you could not go back and challenge it because they blew the play dead. But Thomas, to his credit, ran into the end zone. But that also had a big effect on the momentum the Saints had early on in this ball game. Let's take a look at the final numbers from how this game developed at the Dome this afternoon. Some gaudy numbers when you look at the total yards. And, of course, we already talked about the score, the highest scoring season opener in NFL history with the 88 combined points, 529 yards of offense from Tampa Bay. That's a lot from anybody, but with Fitzpatrick Scott coming in, the expectations that you had, that's going to get somebody's attention.
Yeah, you certainly didn't expect this with Tampa Bay coming in. We talked about they have shiny pieces. Fitzpatrick hasn't played a game like this in his career, and that's where the disappointment really lies with this. But when you go through the numbers, when you get into these shootouts, it really comes down to turnovers, and I think that's the number that sticks out the most. When you get into shootouts, possessions are at a premium, and the Saints obviously with 2 turnovers, that was the difference in the game.
And just to his point, you look at the third down conversions where the Saints were 4 of 9, but look at the red zone, 4 of 5, very efficient when they got there. It's just that statistic 2 lines below that with those 2 turnovers to none for Tampa Bay.
If I'm going to argue and fuss about something, it's going to be the 2 turnovers and the penalties. I think, 8 for 77 is way too much for this team. They're 3 or 4 as far as penalties are concerned. That's normally what they should get. You can't have any turnovers. It's hard to win in this league when you have those turnovers. And then you've got to find a way to get off the field. 8 of 13 for Tampa Bay is just, they've got to limit that to 6 of 13 if possible.
A lot of those numbers are going to sting with this Saints defense. More from them from the locker room as Mike Neighbors had a chance to catch up with defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins.
Well, they say any given Sunday, you guys were the biggest favorites in the NFL this week, but you never know, do you?
Yeah, that's the way this league works. It's obviously the best of the best, week in, week out. Division opponent, someone who knows us very well, and they were able to obviously go out and make more plays than we were. It sucks right now, but it's just the way it goes in this league sometimes.
Sean, this defense played so well a year ago, did so many things right. How frustrating is this performance?
It's definitely frustrating. No matter how well we played last year, we knew this was going to be a new year. And throughout training camp, throughout practices, leading up to this game, we felt prepared. We felt like we're put in a position to be able to go in and make the most of this game and make plays and get stops. But obviously we didn't execute. We'll have to take a look at the film and critique ourselves, get back to work. The great thing about this league is you get another chance. So a week from today, we'll line up against another team and get a chance to prove ourselves and go out and show what kind of defense we can really be.
I know you wanted more pressure on Ryan Fitzpatrick, but the Bucs have really stacked their offensive line. It's a different offensive line than you used to facing, especially last season. How much better was that O-line compared to last year?
Well, I think, they definitely got a little better. I think when you bring in a guy like Ryan Jensen, from Baltimore, they paid him a lot of money to be able to man that middle and control everything in there. And then, I think they did some switching up with, I think Marpet, moved, to guard, and then they put Betnock inside, and, he's athletic inside. So I think they did some things that, that kind of put them in position to be successful. But also, Ryan did a great job back there, manipulating the pocket and being able to find creases, find lanes, and make plays for his team, and I think, hats off to him. He's done that for a long time in this league, and he's obviously still capable of continuing to do that.
Final question. I know you wanted to get off to a quick start, get your first win to open the season since 2013, but last year you proved that you could have a slow start and rebound. How do you guys rebound right now?
We've been here before. We faced adversity, and we were able to crawl out of that and obviously go on to have the season we had last year. So it's not a death sentence. It's nothing to really worry about. The only time you could worry is if these things start to show up week in, week out. So we're going to go back, watch the film, critique ourselves, and look to get better next week and come out and put out a better showing.
All right, tough loss. I appreciate your time.
Hey, no problem.
All right, St. Shelton Rankins, back to you guys in the studios.
And when we come back on Saints Tonight, we'll head back just outside the Saints locker room. Quarterback Drew Brees sits down, starting another season with his one-on-one interview with Mike Neighbors. That's coming up next here on Saints Tonight. One of the rare moments in an NFL game that during halftime, barely anybody left their seats in the Superdome, and that's because of this right here. The late owner, Tom Benson, having his name put into the Saints Ring of Honor. There you see Mrs. Benson, Mickey Loomis, Dennis Lauscha on the field as they played a wonderful video tribute to Mr. Benson. A lot of emotion there at halftime as they put his name up there to forever be held just off of midfield there at the Dome. Tom Benson getting his name there in the Saints Ring of Honor. And of course, we lost Mr. Benson during the offseason, which means that we have not seen my two teammates here on the set since the passing of Tom Benson. And before we have a chance to go back and focus on the game and hear from Drew Brees and his thoughts on Tampa Bay, I thought I'd ask each of you guys your thoughts, because you all both played for this franchise. You all both knew Mr. Benson very well. They had a very nice video tribute where a lot of the current players talked about what he meant to them. It was ended by Drew Brees and stuff. But Scott, let me start with you first before we come to you, Deuce. But just your thoughts on Mr. Benson and what he meant to you and what he meant to the franchise. And I will say this, in the video, they didn't just focus on the Saints. They talked about his acquisition of the Pelicans. They talked about his unbelievable charity and his giving to churches and schools here and throughout the country. And it really just showed how much he was of a community man. But first and foremost, it seemed like the theme from everybody was family. So wanted to give you guys both an opportunity to have something to say.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing I always felt like why tell people my affiliation with the Saints runs so deep, even though I played for other teams. The way Mr. Benson ran this organization, ran the team, it always felt like family. From always having our families come around for events, the top-notch everything, whether we were traveling, the hotels we stayed in, it was top-notch everything. And he treated the players like championship caliber players. And when you have an owner who treats you like that, you want to give him results in the end. And I think that was the one thing I noticed when we all started this thing in 06, when Coach Payton came in with us, is we saw an owner who was very supportive of winning. And he, at any stop, he would do anything he needed for Coach Payton, whatever he needed, whatever he wanted to win and turn this organization around. So I always had a lot of respect for Mr. Benson because of that.
For me, just being able to go in his office and talk to him, and not about football. I mean, from him being able to tell me things about business and, to be able to ask for help, but then just to talk about the football, the game of football, and, being able, you need to win. I can remember some bad times as well. You guys played like a high school team coming into the locker room. He was going to tell the truth, but you respected him. But also just looking at him and seeing how excited he was to be able to hand him the NFC Championship trophy. And, he loved this city. He loved this city. He wanted to make this city proud, and whatever he could do to enhance it as far as for the players, to give us that edge that we needed, he tried to do.
It was a nice moment during that video where they showed an old press clipping of him talking about the Saints having the best fans in all the NFL, and he was determined to bring a title. Now, that was years and years ago, but then when they transitioned to see him holding up the Lombardi, it was a nice little transition there. Thanks to both of you guys for sharing some of your thoughts, as it was certainly a nice ceremony there in halftime. Unfortunately, the Saints couldn't wrap up that emotional day with a win, a tough loss to the Bucs, 48-40. We told you about Drew Brees' numbers earlier. He goes 37-45 for 439 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was his 16th time, an NFL record now that he keeps adding to, career 400-yard passing game. But he will also be one of the biggest ones breaking this film down to try to improve the team as they get ready to host Cleveland. Afterwards, as he always does, for several years, Drew Brees sat down to talk exclusively with our Mike Neighbors.
All right, guys, tough opening loss for the Saints. Drew Brees joins us, 12th season here with CST. Let's talk about this game. Really a tale of two halves in terms of the tempo, but how surprised are you at this outcome?
Well, listen, we were hoping to start fast and get a win. Divisional opponent at home, get the season started off right. Disappointing that we came up with the loss. Credit to them. They played really, really well, especially offensively. There's some things that we are going to look at the tape and say, man, we've got to improve upon. I know offensively had a couple drives, that kind of died on us because of penalties. You get a penalty that sets you back, 1st and 20, or a negative play here and there. Those are things you got to try to avoid because, it puts you into third and, long situations against the chains. But bottom line, if you really want to boil it down, it was obviously a high-scoring game, but if you take away, the turnover that gives them 7 points, right, the fumble return, and then, we had one other fumble where we were in a position to get points, either a field goal or maybe more, that's a 10-point swing, and the 10-point swing makes a huge difference in this game.
A lot of plays, like you said, were pivotal in a game like this, but Michael Thomas had a strange play where he wasn't touched and nothing. The ball was dead. You really couldn't do much about it. How frustrating was that play?
Well, I didn't really see it. I was kind of scrambled, won't throw it, and then I'm kind of getting jostled around. But and I really didn't even look at the jumbotron on it. I was just trying to get the crowd quiet because it was one of those things where there's nothing we can do about this at this point, right? What's done is done. Please quiet down so that we can operate the offense. And, we ended up getting some big plays and moving the ball down the field after that.
In the third quarter, it was such a shootout. In the first half, I think you guys combined for as many points in any game in 4 years in the NFL. The third quarter, the tempo changed a lot. What happened in that third quarter that changed the way the Bucs may be playing or the way you faced them?
No, I mean, listen, I can think of two drives where we stalled out. One, They kind of hit us for a negative play on a screen play, so then we get in a third and long, and then the other one was, I think we start off with a holding call, so it was 1st and 20. So, man, those are hard to overcome, so things we can improve upon.
After all was said and done, though, I mean, you almost come back. And you come back within one score. You get the ball back. Who knows what could have happened? What does it say about this team that you didn't give up at all?
No, absolutely not. Listen, we always feel like we have a chance. We feel like we can score quickly. We know our defense can get out there and make plays. And we got the dome back into it. That was huge. But credit to them. Credit to, Fitz for scrambling and getting the 13 yards to, kind of seal the game. But, man, just to get ourselves back in a position where, we know we got a chance. That's big. It's big for this team. It's big for our fans just to know that, man, there's always a chance.
I know it was a point of emphasis to start strong, but you guys proved last year you could be 0-2 and obviously go on a run. How frustrating is it that you start slow again, but does it give you hope that you bounce back before?
Yeah, it does. Listen, if we play like we know how to play, we could win every game. If we don't play that way, we can lose every game, But I think we know that we are good enough, we are disciplined enough, we work hard enough that we can go out there and we can win a lot of them, And despite the outcome today, obviously it's not the way we wanted to start things, but there's going to be positives that come from this. There's going to be good that comes from this because that's what you have to tell yourself. And, man, you take a close look at that film, that close look at that tape. You take a good look in the mirror. Say, what can I do to help this team, to make myself better, therefore to make the team better, so that we can accomplish the goals we set out to accomplish.
Is the bottom line, you don't want to get carried away after one game, win or lose? You have to have that mindset, don't you?
Yeah, listen, even if we had won this thing, we'd be going back and saying, man, a lot of things to fix on this tape.
Listen, good to be with you again for CST. We're going to enjoy you this season. I know this was a tough loss, but we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mike.
That's Drew Brees here in the Superdome, set another record with his first touchdown pass against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He now has the most touchdowns of any quarterback in an opening game in NFL history, breaking Peyton Manning's mark. That's a story here in the Superdome. Back to you guys.
Drew, as always, thanks. Mike, thanks so much for your work today in the season opener. We'll see you next week back at the Dome when this team, the Cleveland Browns, roll into town. A 31-game losing streak was snapped, but they didn't win. We'll explain how that happened when we come back to wrap things up on Saints Tonight. So Atlanta opened the season Thursday night with a loss in Philly. The Saints have a loss as Tampa Bay has a win in the South. How about the other team? The Carolina Panthers hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Cam Newton, a 4-yard touchdown run, made it 7-0 Carolina. Fourth quarter, it's 16-0 Carolina. Dallas finally gets on the board. Ezekiel Elliott takes the pitch, 4 yards. The two-point conversion is good, so it's 16-8 Carolina. One last chance for Dallas. 1:39 to play in the fourth. Dak Prescott out of the shotgun, back to pass, waits, tries to move, backs up, now he's in trouble. Gets hit from behind and fumbles. Carolina recovers. Carolina's defense had 6 sacks against Dallas offense today. The Cowboys just 232 total yards. They're a mess. 16-8, Carolina gets the season opening win. I told you Atlanta lost. Let's show you what happened in the season opener Thursday night in Philly when they put up the banner for winning the Super Bowl. And there it is. They were waiting a long time for this moment for Philly fans. Fourth quarter, Jay Ajayi for Philadelphia, an 11-yard touchdown run, puts it 18-12 Philly. Last play of the game, Atlanta is at the 10-yard line, knocking on the door, but they've got to get it in, down 6. Julio Jones left corner, leaps up, makes the catch, but he's pushed out of bounds. And that's the ball game. In the last 20 red zone attempts between Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, he has completed 1. Philadelphia wins it over Atlanta 18-12. So 2 teams with a win to start the season, Tampa Bay and Carolina. 2 teams with the loss, New Orleans and Atlanta. And New Orleans next week back home for game 2 as they start the home schedule with 2 straight at the Dome. Who will they welcome? The Cleveland Browns, who were 0 for last season. 17-game losing skid opening it up against the Steelers without Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon who? That's James Conner. 22 yards for the touchdown. He finished with 192 yards from scrimmage and 2 TDs. 21-7 Pittsburgh on the road. But in the fourth quarter, Tyrod Taylor to Josh Gordon. Look at this catch. What an unbelievable catch to keep his feet in bounds. And we are tied at 21. And we're going to overtime. In overtime, Big Ben picked off by Joe Sherbert. 36 seconds left to go. At the 40, at the 30, stumbling to the 25, inside the 15. 13 seconds to go as Cleveland gets backed up. The game-winning field goal blocked in the rain in Cleveland. The 17-game losing skid comes to an end. All of those padlocked free beer for Cleveland fan refrigerators still locked. It's only being unlocked by a win, and they finish with a tie, 21-21. The first time a game in Week 1 has ended in a tie since 1971. Believe it or not, though, Cleveland must feel like they're coming to town with a little momentum because it wasn't an L. Game 2 for the Saints will be next weekend in the Dome. I have a representative from each side of the ball. So, Scott, let's talk to you first. We know overall there's a lot of things that need to change defensively. After giving up 500-plus yards, what should the Saints focus on this week getting ready for Cleveland?
Yeah, I think a game like this brings you back down to earth. You've had a long time since last season. You've read all the press clippings about how good you are, all the young talent. Now this game brings you back down to earth. You have to go back to doing what led to success last year. You go back to the film room, you admit when you made a mistake, you go back to practice, you focus, you work hard, you pick up the timing and the pace at practice. And I'm not going to overreact. It's one game. It wasn't a pretty game at all, but still a lot of these guys on this defense were a part of that great run last year, and I think they can turn this thing around next week.
Deuce, on the offensive side, as we talked about, there was no balance. It was passing and rushing for 43 yards total, but they had 475 yards of total offense, yet we still know there's some improvement. What should they focus on?
Well, I think they have to obviously have some balance, but, also when you talk about the passing game, they're going to be upset about the yards that they did leave on the table because there were some opportunities that they did not connect on. You want to have the balance offensively to be able to run the ball. I thought Drew did a really good job of spreading the football around. When the third down opportunities come, you've got to convert those, continue to do what you're doing in the red zone, but then, for them, they have to be on their P's and Q's. Greg Williams is going to try to come after this team. You can't let Myles Garrett destroy it for you. So you have to be ready to pick up the exotic looks and make sure that you're doing what you need to do.
Once again, it'll be a full football weekend here on CST next weekend, starting with LSU Game Day Live next Saturday, getting ready for the LSU and Auburn Saturday morning. Scott will be with me for LSU Tonight next Saturday night to wrap it up. And then we'll do football Sunday all over again. Saints Game Day at 10:30 next Sunday morning. We'll be joined by Mike Neighbors from the Dome. Deuce is with us next Sunday night as we recap the Saints and the Browns. For Mike Neighbors at the Dome, Scott Shanley, Deuce McAllister, I'm Victor Howell. Thanks for joining us here on Saints Tonight. Good night, everybody.